Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. So today I will be discussing about the war in, not the war, the situation between US and Iran and Israel. So we'll be discussing what kind of things led to the current situation where there is a point where any time a war can break out between these two superpowers. Iran is not as big a superpower as US, but still a war with Iran can cause significant damage in the overall structure of the world. So we will be discussing the steps which led to this point. We'll be discussing the steps taken by Iran towards US and Israel. And we'll be talking about the steps that US took and Israel took against Iran. Okay. Um, I'll be talking about this since 1979 because that is when the Islamic Revolution happened, and the current regime was installed in 1979 in Iran. Before that, yes, before that, the dictatorship in Iran had good relationships with, what do I say, with US and UK. And to tell you this, US and UK had good relationships with the dictator of Iran before that. Okay, and it is also said that US and UK only helped him to get that power so that he could allow oil access to US. Now, what before this dictator, there was a leadership that said we will not be trading, we will not be allowing the Western powers to control our oil, will not allow US, will not allow UK. So US and UK had that specific leader overthrown and installed their dictatorship. That dictatorship was overthrown in 1979, which led to the current government. So now, after the Islamic Revolution, there was an ideological difference between US and Iran. Okay, US and Iran and US, Israel and Iran, they will never gel apart. They are like two sides of one coin. They will never think in a specific manner. US and Israel believe one kind of in a specific kind of idea, and they will work together. But Iran does not think that. According to Iran, it has its own ideology. So I have covered over here. Ayatollah Khomeini officially labeled the US as the Great Satan due to its support for the Shah and imperialism, and Israel as Little Satan, viewing it as an illegitimate occupier of Muslim land. So Iran thinks that the land of Israel is also belonging to them. And Iran clearly does not like US. I have a YouTube source over here, which I'm going to play.
Who is your worst enemy, Mr. President?
دشمن اصلی ایران کیست؟
آمریکا.
America.
Okay. So you can see that what Ayatollah Khomeini thinks of US, and he has said so as well in 1982. So after 1979, immediately in 1979, there was a hostage crisis. Iran stormed the US embassy in Tehran in November 1979, holding 52 American diplomats hostage for 444 days. This act violated international law and permanently shattered trust with Washington. Okay, so the people of Iran some people of Iran did not like US, and the new regime of Iran definitely did not like US. So what they did was they held US citizens hostage, US diplomats hostage for 444 days. I have a source from YouTube which I'm going to play.
Mr. President, could you tell us how the tide is being turned in the case of the American hostages in Tehran?
Well, we haven't made adequate progress there. What we've done since the very beginning is to try to protect the lives and safety of those hostages from the original threats that they would be tried and executed, to build up on a worldwide basis support for our position, the condemnation of Iran, and the calling on the Iranian government to protect those hostages and to release them, and to have an adequate commitment in our own nation's military strength and otherwise, other strength, to protect those hostages and to expedite their release. If you remember early, we were fearful about their very lives because those threats to their safety and to their lives were made openly and publicly. We are facing a horrible example of international terrorism, the holding of innocent people as kidnapped victims, supported by and condoned by the government of Iran. And not only has our country and our allies condemned this action and now imposing multilateral economic sanctions against Iran, but the Muslim countries themselves, of whom Iran is a member, have recently called upon Iran to release the hostages and to resolve this crisis.
And yet the Iranian parliament is now saying that it may be late July before they even discuss the fate of the hostages.
My hope and my prayer is that they will be released very soon, but I cannot predict that.
Do you still consider it a crisis, Mr. President? I notice, looking through transcripts, that some months ago, every time you had visitors to the White House, you mentioned the subject and brought it up yourself. Now it seems to me you mention it somewhat less, or volunteer the subject somewhat less. Is it still a crisis? Should we still be saying on the air every day, day 100 and 200 or whatever it is?
Yes.
Should we still be flying flags at half-mast, tying yellow ribbons? Is it still a crisis?
It's still a crisis.
Why don't you talk
There
about
is never any time in my, in my day's work that I'm not aware of the fact that 53 American hostages are being held as an act of international terrorism by the people, government, and the terrorists in Iran.
Mr. President, could you tell us how the tide is being...
Okay. So you saw how President Jimmy Carter was talking about the hostage situation. So there was a hostage situation and it was not good, and it was causing problems. It actually caused problems between relationship of Iran and US. Obviously, Iran did not care about it, but it was a blow. Exporting the revolution and terrorism, 1980s. So, founding Hezbollah, 1982. Following Israel's invasion of Lebanon, Iran's Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, founded, trained, and funded Hezbollah. This group became the tip of Iran's spear against Israel. Okay. So Iran made these proxy groups, which they call the Ring of Fire. And the main purpose of these groups was to export terrorism and do Iran's bidding. Okay, their army could not be everywhere, so they trained soldiers for it to do the work which Iran wanted them to do. And for this, Iran gave them military equipments, money, and all sorts of support to make this happen. Okay, this support was given through, this support was given in Iraq as well. This support was given to Hamas, and Hezbollah has been founded since 1982 and is one of the main strengths of Iran, or you can say one of the main proxy groups of Iran, which does what Iran wants it to do, the dirty work, which Iran would not do it itself. So I have a source of YouTube here as well. So let's take a look at it.
Hezbollah is a terrorist organization that was founded in 1982. Since then, its militants have committed attacks worldwide. In fact, up until 9/11, Hezbollah had killed more Americans than any other terror group. In 1983 and 1984, Hezbollah carried out 2 attacks on the American embassy in Lebanon, killing 86 people.
The explosion devastated the embassy.
A Hezbollah suicide bomber took down a plane in Panama in 1994, killing 21 people. In the same year, Hezbollah bombed the AMIA in Buenos Aires, killing 85 people. More recently, in 2012, a Hezbollah suicide bomber killed 6 people in an attack in the Burgas airport. And they're not showing any signs of stopping. Hezbollah has collected more than 120,000 rockets and has trained 45,000 fighters, making them one of the largest and well-armed terror organizations. Israel feels this threat more than anyone else. Hezbollah is just across our border, and since its establishment, this terror organization has carried out thousands of attacks against Israeli civilians, including launching hundreds of rockets at Israeli cities.
Hezbollah is a terrorist group with a mission to destroy Israel and, frankly, if given the chance, us too.
Again and again, Hezbollah proves that their goal isn't peace. It's terror, and it needs to stop.
Okay. I have an article for this as well. Okay, there are no points over here, so I'll not be discussing this whole thing. But yeah. Killing Americans in Beirut, 1983. So in the previous video, you saw the kind of things that Hezbollah has done since its beginning. Okay, I have the article for that. The article is, okay, this is the article. Hold on. Give me a moment. Take this one. Yes.
Bodies and pieces of bodies were.
Okay, so you saw in the video the kind of things Hezbollah has done since its inception. There's a timeline in this article. I'll share all these links in the description. Okay, so these are kind of things that Hezbollah has done since its formation. So you can see Israel invaded Lebanon in Operation Peace for Galilee. Within week, Iran deployed 1,500 Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps advisors to Lebanon, Bekaa Valley to recruit, train, and a new Shiite militia that evolved into Hezbollah. Members of nascent Hezbollah bombed U.S. Embassy in West Beirut, killing 63. Then in October, they bombed U.S. and French peacekeepers in Beirut. Then again, same year, December, claimed responsibility for 6 coordinated bombings in Kuwait City. Next year, September 1984, they bombed the U.S. Embassy Annex in East Peru, killing 23. They hijacked a flight in 1985, and they have done something or the other repeatedly. 1995, 1996. So that has been the main purpose of Hezbollah since its formation by Iran. I will cover a video for this thing. The 1983 Beirut barracks bombing. Okay, so let's take a look at this.
Bodies and pieces of bodies were everywhere. Screams of those injured or trapped were barely audible at first as our minds struggled to grapple with the reality before us. A massive 4-story building reduced to a pile of rubble, dust mixing with smoke and fire, obscuring our view of the little that was left. We saw Marines risk their own lives again and again as they went into the smoke and the fire to try to pull someone out, or as they worked to uncover friends, all the while knowing that further collapse of huge pieces of concrete precariously perched like dominoes could easily crush the rescuers. There was humanity at its best that day. A reminder not to give up the hope and dreams of what the world could be. Bodies and pieces of bodies.
Okay, so it was a very devastating attack in 1983. There are some videos which I'm going to play further as I'm making this, which show that some bomb blasts were just massive. Globalizing the conflict, this one, Argentina bombings. Iran is widely recognized and legally accused by Argentina as the mastermind behind the suicide bombings of the Israel embassy and the Armia Jewish Center in Buenos Aires, which killed 85 people. So this is a very massive attack. Let's take a look at the video. I want to show what happened.
The government of Argentina has promised to declassify documents relating to the 1992 bombing of the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires. 29 civilians died and over 240 were wounded in that attack. A group called the Islamic Jihad organization claimed responsibility. President Cristina Fernandez says that the documents will be released in response to requests from relatives of the victims. Now, earlier this month, her government declassified archives relating to a later attack on the Amia Jewish Center in the Argentinian capital.
Let's take a look at another video. So you saw some of the scenes in it. Let's take a look at further scenes. Okay, I'm going to mute this because I'm shooting this one again today. I shot this video yesterday and it gave me a copyright strike on this video because of the soundtrack, and I really don't want that. So I'm going to mute this, but we can still see. Okay, so it was a pretty devastating attack. Sorry. It was a pretty devastating attack, and it caused a lot of lives. This was done by Hezbollah 1992 and 1994. The nuclear deception. Okay. I don't have, I don't think, I think I don't have a video source for this, but I do have this source. Sorry. So in the summer of 2002, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, an umbrella organization made up of several Iranian dissident groups, revealed the existence of 2 Iranian nuclear sites, a uranium enrichment facility at Natanz and a heavy water production facility at Iraq. Okay. So Natanz, you might be aware that recently only there was a strike by United States on it, where the B-2 bombers um, struck the facility, and the bombs went deep into the earth first and then blasted over there. The aim was to destroy the nuclear capability of Iran. So that's what the aim was. Although some people or some reports say that the nuclear material was removed from there. Although the facility is destroyed, but the nuclear material was removed from there just before the strike. Let's take so I'll get to the point over here that US technically did not want anybody to have nuclear power. It knows USSR had it. I mean, Russia has it, but it is in the best of interest of these big powers that the other countries in the world don't hold nuclear weapons, because if everyone has nuclear deterrence, if everyone has nuclear weapons, it is a bit problematic for everyone, because then almost everyone can inflict a significant amount of damage on the other person, which is something that that's not ideal. It's not something that US would want, because it does want nuclear supremacy. Obviously, it does not have supremacy. There is Russia, but still, it would want very less countries to have a nuclear weapon. And it would definitely not want Iran to have nuclear weapons because of all the events that have transpired. What if Iran gave nuclear access to Hezbollah? Obviously, that is difficult. That's not kind of going to happen, because a nuclear weapon is with the country only. But still, certain things are still risky. And obviously, certain things are risky. These kind of things don't normally happen. But who knows? Who knows what kind of technology they have and what kind of weapons they give to their proxy groups. So that is one thing that they would definitely avoid. Existential threat. President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad openly called for Israel to be wiped off the map, convincing Israeli leaders that a nuclear Iran was not just a strategic threat, but a threat of annihilation. So they have said, if we get nuclear, we are going to annihilate you, to Israel. So this is what I was talking about, that the ideology of Iran is very much different than the ideology of Israel and US, and it's never going to match. So I'll show the source for this. Here is the source for it. This is the source is Guardian. Israel should be wiped off map, says Iran's president. Okay, that was cold. Again, I'll paste this link in the description. You guys can take a look at it yourself. Killing US troops in Iraq. Okay. Iran manufactured and supplied Shia militias in Iraq with these sophisticated roadside bombs, which could cut through the armor of US Humvees and tanks. All right. There's one thing I wanted to cover over here. Where is that? Okay, so actually, Iran wanted to make Iraq as a proxy zone from where they could launch attacks on Israel. I don't have the source of it ready with me right now, but that was the intention. Iran and Iraq had a war. I haven't made a video on it. Maybe I'll make it, but I haven't made it yet. So Iran and Iraq had a war, but obviously we all know what happened in Iraq, what happened in Syria. It became a very volatile zone, and Iran wanted to keep that volatile zone as a forward base from where they could strike Israel. Now, in order for things to remain bad in Iraq, they would need to constantly pump in money and weapons into that zone to the militias so that they could keep causing damages to its economy and not let things develop. So the results of this was that Pentagon officials estimated that Iranian weapons killed over 600 American soldiers. Again, a problem for US, that Iran is supporting militias that are actively striking US. So this is another action by Iran where they wanted to inflict damage on the US. Building the ring of fire. So this ring of fire was the thing which I was telling you about, that this ring of fire was made around Israel, and its main purpose is to like Iran's main purpose was to create these proxy groups that can do its bidding, that can strike countries, that can disrupt trade routes, disrupt oil routes. So something like that. Let's take a look at the video that we have over here.
The Middle East is intensifying. Iranian-backed forces have launched a wave of attacks against U.S. and Israeli targets in the region.
The White House accuses Tehran of provoking the crisis and prompting an American military response. George Thomas has more.
The Islamic mullahs in Tehran have dubbed it their axis of resistance.
What the supreme leader there calls his ring of fire around Israel is to build up these terror groups, these proxies for Iran, to do the fighting for Iran so that Iran doesn't have anybody come knocking on its doorstep.
Since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, Iranian proxies in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen have dramatically upped their strikes against Israel and U.S. interests in the region.
Iran didn't arm and equip and train and finance the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, Shia militia groups in Iraq to use these resources for their own benefit at their own discretion. Iran did all that so it would have a capability through its proxies to act as it's acting now.
The U.S. responding with attacks on the proxy militias.
We have taken military action against sites in Iraq and Syria that are also tied to the IRGC, which supports these militias. We have said quite clearly that we hold Iran responsible for the groups, the proxies that it supports and that it provides weapons to.
Iran's Revolutionary Guard forces in just the past week have also launched direct attacks on 3 of their close neighbors, Iraq, Syria, and Pakistan. These multiple flashpoints now causing concern of a much broader conflict pitting Iran and its allies against Israel and the United States.
It just shows just how dangerous the situation is in the wider Middle East.
It's all part of their strategy, but ultimately, they want us to be fighting these tentacles so that we get bogged down and distracted. What we really need to focus on is the head of the octopus, and that's Iran.
Iranian-backed militias have launched more than 140 rocket and drone attacks against U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria since October 7th. The most serious attack happening at the Al-Assad airbase in western Iraq this past weekend. CENTCOM reporting that a number of U.S. personnel sustained traumatic brain injuries.
It was a very serious attack using a capability, ballistic missiles that pose a genuine threat.
Richard Goldberg, who handled the Iranian portfolio at the White House National Security Council, says such actions show Iran is clearly undeterred and has no reason to rein in its proxies, whether it's Houthi rebels targeting shipping vessels in the Red Sea or militias attacking our U.S. troops in Syria.
But remember, Iran is looking at the big picture here, and the Biden administration's policy is still to give money to Iran while all of this is going on. We have $10 billion flowing from a Biden sanctions waiver today that the Iranians are benefiting from.
George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, please pray for our State Department and all the advisors and for our administration. Pray that they would wake up to the threat, because the threat, in my view, is obvious, and we should start believing what they say. What they say is that Israel is the little Satan and we are the great Satan. How do you negotiate with that? How do you continue to fund that? They have no interest in peace. They want to wipe Israel off the map. They want to create this vast Muslim empire, reinstate all of that. That's their goal. They hope within the chaos that will come from that a Mahdi will appear in a well in Iran. They hope all of these things. They're quite dedicated to it. So why don't we believe them when they say these things? Why do we say, oh, no, there's peace possible. Let's continue negotiations. They aren't really going to try to develop a nuclear weapon. All of the things that are happening right now, the chaos, the various tentacles that are acting and we're being forced to respond, is trying to hide what they are clearly doing. They want to acquire a nuclear weapon.
Okay. So you saw that Iran has created a ring of fire around Israel, and its main purpose is to destroy Israel, and it wants to annihilate US too, if it is possible for it. US is a very big superpower. Iran is not that great of a superpower compared to US. Sorry, Israel is not that big of a superpower compared to US, but still. Iran wants Israel off the map over there. That one thing is clear. So I have one point, saving Assad. Iran intervened in the Syrian civil war to keep Bashar al-Assad in power, turning Syria into a forward base for the IRGC to threaten Israel. So this is what I was talking about a bit earlier, that Iran wanted to use Syria and Iraq as a buffer zone or a proxy zone from where they could strike Israel and keep things difficult for them. Because you see, Israel and US are really great friends. They have been friends for quite a while, and hurting Israel is like hurting US. Plus they don't like Israel as well. So it's double bonus. So Iran is going to strike Israel. And recently also they have threatened that if US strikes, we are going to strike in the heart of Tel Aviv. They have said that in a public statement. So this thing that they wanted to do was make Syria into a forward base or a buffer zone from where they could launch attack to Israel. Let's take a look at the source that I have. Why did Iran launch the attack? Iran has a long-standing presence in Syria to support President Bashar al-Assad during the Syrian civil war and to maintain a corridor to provide Hezbollah in Lebanon with weapons to threaten and attack Israel. Israel has conducted several attacks on Iranian targets in Syria in recent years. Attacks escalated in late 2023 following the Hamas assault of 7th October and missile and the other fire from Hezbollah against northern Israel. Okay, so they were using this as a buffer zone to strike Israel and transport all their weapons and money and some other stuff, whatever they want, to their proxy groups or their ring of fire. So uh, they had it all. They had it all planned out, and they have enacted on that plan as well. Like military strikes, there has been no shortage of military strikes by Iran on Tel Aviv and US. Iran supplied Hezbollah with over 150,000 rockets and missiles, including precision guided munitions capable of hitting specific buildings in Tel Aviv. Let's take a source look. Okay, nothing is highlighted. So I'll just paste this in the chat. So Iran has been supplying ammunitions to Hezbollah for quite a while, arming the Houthis. Iran provided the long-range drones and a ballistic missile to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, who later used them to attack US and Israel Navy ships in the Red Sea. Okay, so this is what happened. In the Red Sea, they have been disrupting supplies and trade routes. So yeah, Houthis are one of the proxy groups of Iran, part of the Ring of Fire only. Crossing the Red Line, Direct War 2024. April 13 and October 1, 2024 attacks. For the first time in history, Iran launched hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones directly from Iranian soil at Israel. This marked the end of the shadow war and start of direct state-on-state conflict. So this is what we are seeing right now. There's a direct state-on-state conflict. Iran is like, I'm going to strike all your friends. I'm going to strike all my neighbors that are supporting you. And US is like, you dare not do this, otherwise we're going to strike you. So there's a lot of volatility currently in the Middle East. And I will not be surprised if even tomorrow this war breaks out. So let's take a look at what steps have US and Israel taken. Okay, that is also one of the main parts that we have to cover. The first freeze. So we saw the video of President Jimmy Carter, and they said that they have, in that video he said that he has placed economic sanctions. So this is about that. The first freeze, US 1979. Following the embassy hostage crisis, President Carter froze $12 billion in Iranian assets. This was the first step in denying Iran access to global financial system. All right. So they have so again, I'll paste this in the chat, in the description. United States imposed sanction after Iranian students from the US. Iranian students storm the US embassy in Tehran and take diplomats hostage. Okay. So this was, we have discussed a video on this as well. Now the second is blocking oil imports. So this was the main thing. Oil was the main reason that US and UK installed the dictatorship over there. Okay. I know what you will say, that why US and UK, why did they install a dictator over there? Why didn't they let Iran use its own oil? So I'll not go into the judgment of all that, but I will say this. It was the UK and US only who invested in developing the oil infrastructure in Iran. Iran did not have that kind of infrastructure in the beginning, and in exchange for that infrastructure, UK was using the oil which Iran had to offer. Then a leadership rose and then said that we are not going to give oil. From there, problems began. Probably over there, US and UK should have taken a better approach. rather than having the leader removed and installing their leader, which led to a crisis down the road, which led to 1979 revolution, which led to so many problems. So yeah, this was all about oil. In Iran, it was all about oil. Even the revolution came because they did not want their oil to be used. Even now, President Donald Trump, I won't comment much, but in my opinion, I think this is still to do about oil. Although there's an angle of nuclear weapons that they don't want Iran to possess, but it could very well be about oil. So we saw in Venezuela that the first order which the president passed was allowing US oil companies to extract Venezuelan oil. So maybe when if US controls things, if this thing does not quiet down, then we'll have to see the kind of things that US does in Iran, which will reflect their motive over there. But in 1987 to 2015, they have blocked oil exports from Iran through successive acts like the Iran-Libya sanctions. US penalized foreign companies for investing in Iran's energy sector. By 2012, this cut Iran's oil exports by 50%, costing the regime hundreds of dollars in lost revenue. So this was a big blow to Iran. Iran would have been a very strong nation with a very strong army and very strong oil supplies, but that did not happen. All because the stressed relationship between US and Iran. SWIFT disconnection. In a crippling blow, the US and EU disconnected Iranian banks from SWIFT. This effectively forced Iran to trade via cash and barter, destroying the value of rial. I have a video for this as well. I'm gonna play it. So many ads.
SWIFT is essentially the computer hub that processes the world's financial transactions. It's been called the central nervous system of finance. Anthony Mason has been looking into what would happen if Iran were cut off. Anthony?
Scott, SWIFT said today it stands ready to implement sanctions against Iran as soon as the U.S. and the European Union agree on them. The move could shut down much of Iran's oil business and put a hand to the throat of the Iranian economy.
From its Brussels headquarters, the SWIFT network processes upwards of 80% of the world's cross-border payments, more than $6 trillion in transactions between banks and businesses every day. But Iran could be kicked off the system.
Has SWIFT ever cut a country off before?
No.
Leonard Schrank was CEO of SWIFT from 1992 to 2007.
Throwing somebody off the system, big. That's big. We've never done that before.
If SWIFT cuts off Iran, how will they do it?
Every country has a code, and they just delete it. It's like disconnecting somebody from their account on the internet. You can get another one, but at SWIFT there isn't another one.
44 Iranian banks and financial institutions have unique access codes to SWIFT that could be denied. Those Iranian companies currently send and receive more than 2 million transactions a year.
Anyone that wants to do business internationally has to eventually pay for what they buy or what they sell. And they won't have a pipe to do that. SWIFT, in a way, is the plumbing of the international financial system. They'll be cut out of that plumbing.
So basically, there's no easy way around this.
No, you're cut off, you're cut off.
Iran would be forced to pay cash, which would bring its economy to a crawl. The European Union is expected to reach a decision on sanctions within weeks. Iran could be cut off as early as next month, Scott.
Anthony, thanks very much. The White House thinks that the economic sanctions already imposed against Iranian banking and trade are beginning to bite. For example, the value of Iran's currency has dropped about 20%. There are some food shortages, and a basket of groceries in the capital, Tehran, that cost $73 in 2010 runs about $144 now.
Okay. So you can see that they have actually displayed what kind of impact that those sanctions and swift disconnection had on Iran. Its value reduced 20%, and a bag of groceries that used to cost $70 was costing $144, like double. So maximum pressure. This was under the Trump administration. Trump administration has been a very serious advocate of this issue. Designated IRGC as a foreign terrorist organization and sanctions Iran petrochemical, metal, and shipping industries, causing hyperinflation. Source. Let's take a look at this source as well. Okay, it's not highlighted anything, but I'll paste this in description. Currency collapse. The cumulative effect of these sanctions combined with the cost of 2025 war led to the collapse of Iran and Rial in late 2025, sparking the widespread domestic unrest currently visible in early 2026. Okay, so they're saying that the collapse of economic system led to the final protest,
Iran
although
is facing its deepest economic crisis.
I think that those protests are mostly caused by US and Israel to overthrow the leadership. That's what they want. They don't want Iran's destruction because Iran had been their friend, but they want a change in leadership. So let's see. I have a feeling Donald Trump does get what he wants, but let's see.
Iran is facing its deepest economic crisis in modern history, characterized by extreme currency depreciation, hyperinflation exceeding 40%, and widespread poverty affecting up to 50% of the population. The Iranian rial has plummeted to record lows, trading at around 1.4 to 1.5 million riyals per US dollar in early 2026, losing nearly 45% of its value in 2025 alone. Inflation hit 48.6% in October 2025 and stood at 42.2% by December, with food prices rising even faster, making staples like meat and cooking oil unaffordable luxury. All these together led to the current crisis that has driven people to mass protest, and authorities have cracked down on them heavily. The US-based human rights activist in Iran, or the HRANA group, has verified the deaths of more than 2,000 people during Iran's protest, including 1,850 protesters, 135 government-affiliated individuals, 9 people under the age of 18.
Okay. So you can see that it's stating that a currency collapse is triggering those protests, but I think there are deeper roots to it. But let's see. Phase to the shadow war, cyber and intelligence. Okay, this was a pretty, I shouldn't say interesting, but it was a pretty clever tactic by the US and Israel to destroy the nuclear capability of Iran. Operation Stuxnet, Operation Olympic Games / Stuxnet. The world's first digital weapon, it physically destroyed 1,000 nuclear centrifuges at Natanz by causing them to spin out of control. And to add, it was spinning out of control, but no one was able to monitor it on the screen. It was not visible on the screen that it is out of control.
What if war no longer needed bombs? In 2010, a virus called Stuxnet crippled Iran's nuclear program without a single shot fired. Built by Israel and the US, it was the world's first cyber weapon. Since then, Iran's hackers have struck back, shutting down water plants, hospitals, and even air traffic. Cyber war is no longer theory. It's real, silent, and global. And you? You're already on the battlefield, whether you know it or not. This war has no sirens, no borders, just code and consequences. Could a virus engage countries in a full-scale war? Drop your opinion in the comments. What if war?
Okay, so you saw how they used cyber attack to destroy nuclear capability of Iran. Then there were assassinations as well. Mossad systematically eliminated Iran's top nuclear minds to cause a brain drain, culminating in the 2020 killing of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh using a satellite-controlled machine gun. So I have a video of this. Okay, let's see what the video source is telling.
Manually copying data, wasting 30
This is
to
by
40
News
hours a
Direct,
week.
and
That
they
is
have
the old way.
created an AI video. Let's see what happened. Okay?
Iranian journalist Mohammed Awaz claims to have received leaked information from the country's government about the assassination of Iran's leading nuclear scientist on Friday. Awaz says the attack was carried out by 12 gunmen who were supported by a team of 50 operatives providing them with information and logistics. He says the hit squad knew Mohsen Fakhrizadeh's security convoy was on its way to his holiday home and were waiting in ambush at a traffic circle marking the entrance to the town of Asbard. As the convoy entered the traffic circle, a car bomb exploded, hitting the rear security car. The 12 attackers then opened fire on the middle car with machine guns and 2 sniper rifles. According to Awaz, one of the attackers then dragged the scientist out of his car and executed him. The attackers then disappeared, and so far not one attacker has been caught. The Iranian Fars news agency gave a conflicting report, saying that there were no gunmen and that the attack was done by firing a remote-controlled machine gun mounted on the truck that later exploded.
Okay. So Mossad carried out scientific assassinations, and Israel also caused cyber attacks to make sure that Iran does not get its hands on a nuclear weapon. Shadow war again, nuclear archive raid. Israeli agents stole Iran's secret nuclear plans from a warehouse in Tehran. This intelligence was used by the US to justify withdrawing from a nuclear deal. Let's take a look at the source of this.
When you heard Netanyahu's big speech last night showing off tens of thousands of top secret Iranian nuclear weapons files stolen by Mossad agents, he wasn't clear then about how exactly the spy operation went down. You may have reasonably thought, well, maybe Israeli spies stole the data with a flash drive that was plugged into the right computer. Or maybe it was cyber hacking and the files were downloaded and printed, here in Israel. Maybe it wasn't as dramatic as, Israeli spies literally breaking into a safe in Tehran and walking out with a half-ton worth of documents. But that is exactly what happened. According to the New York Times, they report Mossad agents broke into the warehouse in Tehran's Shurabad district early this year, removed the documents, smuggled them back to Israel the same night, a half-ton of pages. That's heavier than a grand piano, heavier even than a thoroughbred racehorse. And Israeli spies stole these pages from right under the Iranian regime's nose. Joining me now to talk about this daring operation, I have defense correspondent Shai Ben-Ari and Iranian political analyst and lecturer Meir Javanan Far. Shai, let me start with you just because we're learning more details about the operation itself. A spy agency stole sensitive documents from an enemy nation, a foreign government in that nation's capital. Why are they not being more tight-lipped about it, keeping it more secretive? Why go on the offensive like this? What's the message?
Right. Well, according to the sources quoted in the New York Times, at least, the sources have not been compromised. That's perhaps debatable. But certainly there is an advantage when you present evidence in this way. First of all, there's a psychological impact. You're, again, displaying, let's say, the long arm of Israeli intelligence, and that maybe sends a message to Iran, look, we're monitoring you today. We've always been monitoring you. We have the ability to continue to monitor you, even when you think you're protected. There's also, I would think, a question of credibility. This kind of evidence, when Netanyahu says this is the physical evidence, the hard copies, the actual folders and actual CDs, there's no suspicion that perhaps there's a certain sort of doctoring of imagery. Perhaps you could still suspect certain things even in this kind of situation, but they want to say this is the original hard copy and not anything in between.
Mayor, we're hearing reaction from Iran and several Iranian officials about the Netanyahu speech and the intelligence that was gathered therein. But really, what does Iran think about the actual raid itself? Are they denying that Israeli spies cracked safes, broke into a warehouse, and walked out with tens of thousands of documents? Isn't that hugely embarrassing?
Well, they're not saying anything about it, and I can understand. First of all, if it's true, it's hugely embarrassing, but
forgive me for being a bit skeptical about Mossad saying exactly what they did, because there was this story that they said how they got information on the Syrian nuclear reactor, that there was a Syrian official in a hotel, they went to his laptop, you know, do you really...
Okay, let's take a look at the next thing then. This was about the nuclear archive raid by Israel on Iran's nuclear areas, like nuclear documents. Again, a step to make sure that Iran does not get its nuclear weapons, and Iran was not liking all this, which is why all the bombings by Hezbollah. Intelligence penetration, Israel 2024, assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh inside an IRGC guest house in Tehran, proved that Iran's internal security services had been thoroughly compromised. I don't have a video source for this. Assassination of Ismail Haniyeh. Let's see.
Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in a guest house located in the upscale Tokal neighborhood in northern Tehran. The explosive device, placed weeks earlier by the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, had been concealed within the guest house. The blast resulted in the deaths of Haniyeh and his bodyguard, severely damaging the building. The operation took months of careful planning and required thorough surveillance of the premises. Ismail Haniyeh.
Okay, so we covered the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh inside the IRGC guest house. So obviously Islamic Revolutionary Guard's guest house. So that should make clear that Hamas was a proxy of Iran, and Iran was using it to control Israel or to torture Israel or to damage Israel. So that's what was happening, not just Hamas, the Hezbollah, the Houthis and all. Military degradation, kinetic strikes, Operation Praying Mantis, 1988. The US Navy. So now we'll discuss about the military strikes. For now, we were discussing covert operations and economic sanctions, which the US and Israel did. Now, actual military strikes are very important, because now we are at a point where the economic sanctions, and Donald Trump is not the only president to perform economic sanctions. You have seen President Jimmy Carter also did that. Other presidents have also done that. So President Trump is also doing that. But against Iran, it has reached a saturation that we don't care. Iran knows it has its customers for oil, and it will export its oil to them. So economic sanctions don't actually bother Iran so much, but a military strike does. Everybody is scared of military strikes, and right now US and Iran are just one step away from a military strike. So Operation Praying Mantis, the US Navy destroyed 2 Iranian oil platforms, sank much of Iran's navy in Persian Gulf, and ending Iran's ability to threaten oil tanker for decades. Let's take a video source look.
Just days after USS Samuel B. Roberts hit the mine, President Reagan ordered U.S. forces to strike back. Petty Officer Chuck Moore has the story.
President Reagan ordered defensive action in response to the mining of USS Samuel B. Roberts. On the morning of April 18th, 2 Iranian oil platforms, Sasan and Siri, were destroyed by naval gunfire and demolitions.
They must know that we will protect our ships, and if they threaten us, they'll pay a price.
Evacuate the platform immediately. I repeat, evacuate immediately.
In response, an Iranian patrol boat fired on U.S. forces at the Siri platform, only to be sunk by USS Simpson and USS Wainwright. Further south in the Gulf, Iranian frigates fired on U.S. ships and aircraft in the Strait of Hormuz.
I don't know if anybody else was surprised about the response from the Iranians, but I certainly was.
While these attacks may have been unexpected, the Navy was not unprepared.
Well, we, of course, had no way of knowing just what their reaction might be. On the other hand, it would not be prudent not to have planned what to do in the event of a reaction. Of course, our ships are prepared and have the necessary guidance to permit them to defend themselves against any hostile action, and they took the necessary action very successfully.
This is a warning. Stop and abandon ship. I intend to sink you. Over.
I think that the performance of our ships in the Persian Gulf incidents of the last several days prove that if you're ready, you don't need a lot of planning. It's a come-as-you-are situation, and the ships were prepared, and when the whistle blew, they were ready to go.
During the 9-hour clash between U.S. and Iranian forces, Navy ships and aircraft made successful strikes against Iranian frigates and speedboats. Navy officials say all but one missile fired was on target. Meanwhile, when the Iranians were launching missiles at U.S. ships, sailors fired metal chaff into the air to confuse those missiles' guidance system. The result, all of the Iranian missiles fired missed.
You can't do that without well-trained crews who've been working hard to get themselves into a high state of readiness, as all our ships out there are.
Naval aviators were also ready. All of the A-6 Harpoons were direct hits, as were the laser-guided bombs.
We also used other ordnance against the Bog Hammer, a very high-speed speedboat, difficult to hit. A maneuvering target at sea is a very difficult thing to hit, but our pilots showed their skill, and our ordnancemen showed how well they could do the job.
Officials say this kind of success, both in the air and on the sea, prove that Navy weapons programs are just what the doctor ordered.
What it tells me is that we're building the right weapons to do the job. They worked, and they worked as advertised. They worked in a tough environment.
Okay, so we saw that there was a strike, and we saw what the US officials had to say for it. Let's take a look at what happened in the following years to come. The campaign between wars. Israel conducted over 1,000 airstrikes in Syria to destroy Iranian weapon convoys, preventing the establishment of second Hezbollah on the Golan Heights. Okay, so
what if war no longer needed bombs?
Okay, I don't think I have a video of this. But as I've explained before, that Iran was trying to use Syria and Iraq as a proxy base from where they could strike Israel further. And they were using that specific region to transport its money and weapons that were actually hurting US. So Israel conducted airstrikes on those routes and destroyed the convoys, which prevented the establishment of a second Hezbollah, according to them. Okay, decapitation of Quds Force US 2020. The drone strike that killed Qasem Soleimani removed the architect of Iran's regional power, permanently degrading the coordination of its proxy network. Let's take a look at the YouTube source which we have.
The aftermath shows an attack that was deliberate and sustained. With around a half dozen explosions, the Americans firing with drones clearly didn't want to miss their target, Iran's general Qasem Soleimani. He'd reportedly just gotten into Iraq from Beirut and was leaving Baghdad airport when he was killed in a convoy of vehicles along with a top Iraqi militia leader. President Trump tonight.
Soleimani was plotting imminent and sinister attacks on American diplomats and military personnel, but we caught him in the act and terminated him.
The imminent attacks planned by Soleimani targeted U.S. diplomats, U.S. military personnel, and facilities that house Americans in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and the region of the Middle East, a senior State Department official told reporters today. Qasem Soleimani was no ordinary general. The U.S. officially classified him as a terrorist, but in Iran, he was a national hero. Specifically, Soleimani was in charge of spreading Iranian influence around the world, and he was extremely good at it. Smart, charismatic, ruthless, strategic, and bold, Soleimani knit together a loyal network of armed groups from Iraq to Syria, Lebanon to Afghanistan. Anytime Iran attacked oil tankers in the Persian Gulf and then denied it, or attacked oil facilities in Saudi Arabia and denied that too, U.S. officials.
Okay. So, US and Israel have performed multiple drone strikes. There was a pager bomb that was created by Mossad to kill some of Iran's leadership. So that was also a creative way of completing their missions. Drone strike is a very common thing now, but earlier it was not. Drone strike earlier was a big thing. Dismantling the proxies. Hamas was dismantled by a governing military force. Let's see the video source for it.
Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated.
Okay, Hamas leader. Yeah, we have seen that. Israel killed the entire senior command of Hezbollah, including Hassan Nasrallah, stripping Iran of its primary deterrent. How did they do it? I think this is about the pager bomb which I was talking about. Okay. So the phase towards the 12-day war, June 2025, the conflict culminated in a direct 12-day war of June 2025, which fundamentally broke Iran's offensive power. So yeah, it is true that Israel and Iran got into ballistic missile strikes on each other's cities. And yeah, Iran does have limited ways of replenishing its ballistic missiles, but Israel has a lot of ways. Israel has allies, it has trade routes, but Iran does not. Iran is isolated. So this 12-day war could be a way of making Iran lose its power, so that when the US comes, Iran is not as strong as it used to be. Operation Rising Line Israel. Israel launched massive airstrikes targeting Iran's remaining ballistic missiles, stockpiles, and command center. Let's take a look at this video.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. Moments ago.
Okay, Operation Midnight Hammer. So the Midnight Hammer was the operation where US went and struck.
It was a massive display of force and a series of firsts. The largest ever operational deployment of American B-2 bombers.
Okay, so what was the name again? Hold on, Midnight Hammer. So Operation Midnight Hammer was carried out by US to make sure that Iran loses its capacity or its areas of where it could be producing nuclear bombs and the facility were Fordo and Natanz. Although, like I've said, there are suspicions that the enriched uranium was removed from there, but still destroying the facility was a big thing. So, okay, this was all the presentation that I have had with all the sources that I could find. And mostly I've shown video sources, but I will paste this entire PPT or something like you can paste in comments like if you want this entire PPT or if you only want the links. The links I'll paste in description. So this was what I could find in the conflict of US, Israel, and Iran. US, Israel on one side and Iran on one side. So this conflict has gone very bad now. I have tried to show the steps taken by each sides, and I'll not be judging who's right, who's wrong. It's actually not in my capacity to do that. But yeah, I have tried to explain how this conflict originated. So I hope you like this video and do share it with your friends, like and subscribe for more. Thank you.